Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to be here and to speak with you. I'm Matt Clark. I want you to think of me as a Christian. The Lord saved me, and I didn't deserve it, and I'm grateful to have an opportunity to be here because of my love for the Lord. Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And recently I've been thinking about the importance of us loving one another in our conversations, and the importance that we want to win the man, not the argument. And Wilberforce is known to have captured the hearts of his opponents. They applauded when the slave trade was outlawed, and they loved him. Even his opponents had their hearts warmed by his presence, and that's what it means to be human and to be made in God's image, and to obey that commandment to love your neighbor, even if they're sitting on the wrong side, and to enjoy one another. And we'd probably be able to sit down, Senator Hutto, and I don't know if you have a beer or whatever, and enjoy a good talk together as fellow South Carolinians and neighbors. And so one of the things that we're so committed to is restoring the civility of this conversation as fellow human beings. Because if I don't do that, then I'm undermining the very principles of personhood that I put forth if I don't treat you like a fellow human being. And I don't know about you, but for me, I know that requires a miracle in my heart to truly love other human beings the way that Jesus calls us to love others, to listen and to really give attention to the words that are being spoken. And I think what I've observed here today is a reality that is summed up in this phrase, that we're dealing with a moral issue, not a political issue. And whenever we get into that, we're going to get into basic maxims like Senator Tedder was asking about, like, how do we know these things are true? What do we base our laws upon? And we don't want to force our beliefs on others. No good Christian wants to do that. And yet we do have laws, and laws impose themselves on thieves and murderers, and we agree that we need to have that in our nation. And so, Personhood, South Carolina, I'm the executive director. I'm also a physician. I've been practicing as a physician since 1995. I'm board certified in pediatrics and allergy, asthma, and immunology. And I'm also a pastor of a church in Edgefield, South Carolina, Cornerstone Presbyterian Church. I've been ordained as a pastor since 2014. And my wife's been putting up with me for over 30 years. And we have 11 children, and our three youngest are adopted. And we really want to be a voice for every human being, not just for babies inside the womb. We want to say that all of the practical concerns that have been brought up about protecting good medical practice and leaving out contraceptives and IVF from this conversation, we want to say that's what we're after here. And all the good concerns, the practical concerns that have been brought up so far, if the language needs to be improved in those areas, fine. But the thing that's been so obvious is those practical considerations have been presented as reasons to reject the entire bill. So what we're looking at here is a moral difference, because the thing that we're dealing with is that abortion is legalized murder of innocent, defenseless children in our state. And it's occurring thousands of times per year in our state. And all of these practical considerations, we need to address them. But the reality is God created a world where pregnancy emergencies, pregnancy-related difficulties are very hard to sort through. It's really hard to write law that captures everything that really matters in this conversation. And we grant that. We want to find those good answers to that language that concerns the other side. But that doesn't change the reality of the foundational moral beliefs of our nation. Our Creator, the one true God, believed to be the God of the Bible, we are told granted us the inalienable right to life. And at that time when those words came into existence, English common law was practiced in our nation, and every single colony had abortion outlawed. Those words are referencing the God of the Bible, and the roots of our legal system, whether you're a Christian or not, come from that book, as does English common law. And so when we look to the laws that we make now and we search for the maxims that undergird those things, the answers are in our organic law. And in South Carolina, we're told in our Constitution at the opening phrase, I've got it written here, we the people of the state of South Carolina in convention assembled, grateful to God, grateful to who? grateful to God for our liberties, do ordain and establish this Constitution. And so even if you're not a Christian, the laws that govern our nation and our state point to the Word of God as the foundational maxims that guide how you make good laws. And finally, the reality also is that we know that when we're finished with this life, the law by which we will be judged is the perfect law of God and His Word. And so whether you're a mom or a dad or a pastor or a doctor or whatever you are or a legislator, we all are going to be judged according to that Word. That doesn't make us a theocracy. That doesn't make us someone who's forcing our beliefs on others. That simply causes us to submit to the foundations of law in our nation. And there's ways to do this that protect women. And we believe that abortion harms women. We have a fundamental disagreement on that the other side believes that abortion is good for women. And we sincerely believe that abortion harms women in every case. And so we want you to see that our heart is in the same place as yours in terms of wanting to do what's right for women and children. And in terms of the criminalization and the controversy on the right that's going on right now, and pro-life organizations fighting with one another about it, it's time to turn over that apple cart. It's time to have that conversation, and the evidence that's been presented here is very clear. To say that a woman is automatically a victim beforehand, before the case ever even happens, is clearly irrational, contrary to sound legal principles, and contrary to what it means to have a civil society. I could say more, but those are just off the top of my head from what I've seen so far today.
Thank you, Dr. Clark. Are there any questions? Okay, Senator from Orangeburg.
Dr. Clark, thanks for being here. Be glad to go get a beer with you sometime. That'd be fine. The preamble you just quoted, you said grateful to God, but went on to say, for our liberties. And wouldn't that include the freedom that women enjoy to make decisions for themselves?
You know, Senator Hutto, I've been watching you question people for a long time, and I've never wanted to cross swords with you. I just want you to know that. But everybody's got to have their Thanos, but nobody wants to fight Thanos, right? So I'll draw swords with you today, but we'll have that beer some other time, okay? So the question is regarding the liberties that are referenced in the Constitution.
I'll just say liberty is another word for freedom. Freedom is what women of South Carolina want, is the freedom to make decisions, not the decision that Dr. Clark would make, but the decision that they would make.
Correct. And what you're referencing is a change in the beliefs of our nation, a moral shift that took place since the founding of our nation that does not grant the right to life or freedom to children inside the womb. And, of course, if you start from that spot and you believe abortion is health care and we believe it's murder, there's going to be a significant disagreement about how you manage the liberties of the unborn versus the liberties of the woman. And we would say that God created the union between mother and child with perfect wisdom, and that there's never a situation where we have to sacrifice the liberty of one for another. We believe there's a way through that with wisdom and care for the mother and the child.
Well, I want to get back to just one other line of questioning. I follow up with what I was talking to Dr. Daggs about. So you're a pediatrician in Edgefield, so I assume that if you have a normal pediatric practice, you've had a chance to encounter pregnant teenagers who've come into your office, and while you don't actually do any procedures, you talk to the families about what their options are, right?
Well, let me clarify. I'm board certified in pediatrics and in allergy, and my practice is allergy, asthma, and immunology. So I don't deal with that clinical scenario now, but so that you can have fun with the question, yes, I have dealt with that situation in the past during my pediatrics training.
All right.
If I recall correctly.
I don't really want to have fun with the question. I'm trying to protect the practice of medicine, because I assume that when you were in pediatrics and you encountered that, you discussed it with the teenager and maybe with mom and dad in the room or out of the room, at some point they ask you what the options are. It may have been a pregnancy of rape or incest, or maybe not. But while you don't do abortions and maybe you don't refer for abortions, do you understand that that family may well have left your office and gone across the border to see a OBGYN in Augusta or Atlanta? And when they asked at the intake, how did you get here? And they said, Dr. Matt Clark's my doctor. He sent me over here. That you're now going to be a defendant in a lawsuit if those medical records are subpoenaed and you're down as the referring doctor?
Well, I'm not sure I agree with the premise of your argument, because in the current situation, if I do something illegal, or if I refer someone to something illegal, I'm currently criminally liable for that if I do something illegal right now. And so the situation that you're describing, if I understand correctly, is a situation where I would be recommending something illegal or discussing something
I'm
illegal.
not even saying you recommended anything. I'm just saying that your patient left your office with the understanding that you could not help them.
Okay, so the situation, though, is that it's illegal. Is that the hypothetical situation? It is now illegal to have that done. Is that correct?
Well, let's make the assumption that this bill passed.
Right. So that's the question I'm answering, is it would be illegal. And so the approach to dealing with someone asking me to perform a criminal act is far different than someone asking me about a medical procedure. And so that's the distinction that I referenced already. You see abortion as health care. I see it as the murder of an innocent child. And so that would not trouble me at all in that situation. I would just not tell them. I would not talk about. I would not bring up. I would not give them the option of committing a crime, because I know that that's to aid and abet a crime, like you do and like most people who live in the world know. You don't help people go find where they can commit a crime. So I guess that's my answer to your question. I hope that helps you see how I would handle that as a physician. It wouldn't trouble me at all because it's a criminal act at that point. I wouldn't talk about it.
You're missing my point. You're missing my point. The pregnant child, teenager is in your office. You don't say word one about abortion, okay? You just tell mom and dad that, here, whatever you're going to say. Here's the avenues for adoption. Here's the avenue you can have the child at home, and they leave your office. You hadn't said a word about abortion, but they decide on their own with other counselors or on their own to go over to Atlanta and pursue an abortion. And when the person at the desk of the OBGYN in Atlanta says, "How did you get here?" and they say, "Well, Dr. Matt Clark is my doctor, and that's who I talked to before I came." Now your name, even though you didn't say a word, is in the chart of the OBGYN in Atlanta, and then the father of this child decides they're going to file a lawsuit under this bill, and they subpoenaed the records of the OBGYN in Atlanta. And in those records where it says referring physician, and even though it may be a mistake as far as you're concerned, the patient felt like you were her doctor, and she left your office and went to seek what she decided that she was going to do, and she put your name down.
Yeah, and I would put in my chart that the patient requested to break South Carolina law and murder an innocent child, and that I told them not to do it, and that would be in my medical record. And I'd be fine with that if the law tried to come after me then. I think that's exactly how I would handle it.
I'm not talking about the law coming after you. I'm talking about me coming after you. I'm talking about a lawyer coming after you.
Well, that's what I meant. They could sue away. I mean, I imagine that if I put in my chart some language to make it clear that I warned them not to break the law,
Right.
and in fact, maybe I would just let them know I'm going to call the police and let them know what happened.
Well, you know what I'd do if I was you, I'd put it in the chart too. You try to cover up best you can, right?
I mean, look, you're asking great questions, right? These are meaningful questions.
I'm trying to get you to understand that the criminalization of the practice of medicine is not a good idea.
Well, I would agree with those phrases, but we have different definitions of those words.
Senator from Williamsburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Clark, I just have a couple of questions for you. You mentioned, and you can correct me if I misquote you, that you believe this is not a political issue, but rather a moral issue.
I did say that, and I will obviously grant there are political elements to the discussion, but the foundational question is a moral question.
Well, believe it or not, I agree with the analysis that this is a moral issue, and because it's a moral issue, I remember some years ago when I was in law school, the question was raised as to whether or not you could legislate morality. And so we had an interesting discussion on the issue. But because I believe this is a moral issue, did you know that I think that we should not decide it? And I think that citizens of South Carolina should decide it. So I think it should be a ballot issue. Tell me your thought on that.
I appreciate you joining me in that conversation about it being a moral issue. I'll tell you, for me as a Christian, I draw my conclusions from the Scripture, and I believe that I can easily defend from Scripture the position that I hold, and that the moral position that I hold is based on a book, the Scriptures, the Bible, the Word of God, that has stood the test of time and that will stand the test of time, and that is never in any case going to mislead us. And so maybe you hold to the same standard. I don't know what your standard is, but if so, we have a different understanding of what that book teaches us about children inside the womb and whether they should be protected by law. And I do believe that book tells us very clearly that children inside the womb should be protected by law, and then that was laid out in the English common law, and then it was abortion was not allowed in every colony in the state at the time that the Constitution was ratified. And in 1883, in March of 1883, our state passed legislation that not only continued to state that abortion was illegal, but also had criminal penalties for the mother, but she could have immunity if she testified. So what I'm getting at is I believe that the moral standard that I use is the historical moral standard of our nation and of our state, and that there has been agreement on this question historically from that book on how it applies to our law, and that there was never any concerns about using the Word of God as a standard. We wouldn't know what murderers were. We wouldn't know what adulterers are, as we were talking about with Senator Tedder before. Thank you for what you said. We get our standard in the West from Christianity, and anyone who says otherwise doesn't understand the history of the West.
So 2 things. One, when you talk in terms of the 1800s and how abortion was illegal, but slavery was not, I have a difficult time reconciling when folks take me back there. And you perhaps might understand why.
Absolutely.
But let me go back to the question that I raised in terms of it being a moral issue. And because it's a moral issue, don't you agree with me that the citizens of South Carolina should decide it through the ballot? That was really my question.
I love that question. The moral issue, another way to bring up the moral issue is the question, who is God? Right? And now I don't mean like what religion do you serve?
But do you mind addressing the ballot?
I'm getting there. I'm getting there. Right. So who is God, I think, is the fundamental moral question here. And on the one hand, we have people who say, God is the God of the Bible and has spoken and has already told us what to do on this question. And that we as human beings, if we want to be blessed and live in a society that is civil and good, we will follow what God tells us to do in His Word. So when we say that a woman gets to make her own choice, we're saying, first of all, that she can murder an innocent child. It isn't just a choice and it's not health care. We're also saying that she's God. We're agreeing that she gets to be God over the life of that child, Senator Saab. And if we send it to a ballot...
I would disagree with that.
Okay, well, it seems that way to me. It seems logically that way to me. And I think it's the same as true if we send it to the ballot. This is not up for a vote. Heaven has already voted. It is clear that babies...
But we're voting.
No, what I mean to say is the question should not be up for a vote. Okay? That's my point. That's an unalienable right. That's what the Declaration of Independence means. It is an inalienable right. It is not for men to vote on. And when men think they can vote on who gets life protected or not, they have made themselves God. Do you see that logic? That's what we're saying. And we've departed from that foundational logic upon which our nation was founded.
But we've got a fundamental issue before us. And so I pose the question to you based upon where we are. Not esoterically. And that's kind of how I categorize a lot of what you just said. So the fundamental question is, who votes? Does this group of men vote and decide the issue? Or is it a South Carolina issue? We are lawmakers.
Right. I really do think it's a good question. I don't mean to sound like I'm dodging the question. I do think it's a good question.
So the question then is, somebody's got to vote on it, right? And so ought it be the citizens of the state of South Carolina or should it be these men?
It's my belief legally that the South Carolina Constitution and previous precedent already established the personhood of babies inside the womb, and that any kind of potential court case could be brought forward and end this conversation without a vote. That's my personal belief about where we are legally, not only from the federal Constitution, but from our state Constitution and from precedent that we have in our state acknowledging personhood. So I believe that is a path to end the killing of children in our state. Now, to answer your question, who gets to vote on it? Right now, obviously, the legislature has to vote on it, and the legislature may choose to pass it or not, amend it or not, or maybe kick it down the road to, like you say, a constitutional amendment vote. But my answer to that would be we need to understand that we've walked into ground that we've not been invited to. This question was already answered in heaven, bequeathed to us by our founders, placed in our Constitution, both state and federal, and it's already been answered. Sadly, we've rejected that, and now we have to deal with this. We've rejected the Western freedoms, the liberties that brought up by Senator Hutto by doing this to innocent children in our state and the nation.
So the answer to the question then is that you do not believe that the citizens of South Carolina ought to be the one to decide the issue.
I think it would be a grave philosophical mistake for us to think that this issue rests, the authority with this issue rests with any human being.
So then your other conclusion is that we ought not do it.
I think that you have a responsibility to erase prior iniquitous decrees that have denied the freedoms given to us in our Constitution.
You don't think the citizens should have the right to do it. You think we should have the right to do it.
I don't deny the power of the citizens given to us in the way that we can change our Constitution.
Or the other.
No, it's not one or the other. We are given those powers in our Constitution, and we can trigger that if we want to. I would argue against that as a wise path. That's what I'm saying. I think that would be...
So then the answer to my question, after we've gone through all of that colloquy, is that you don't believe that the citizens should be the one to decide the issue.
Correct. I would completely agree with that. But we do as citizens have to make our voices heard on behalf of the Lord. And if we are in a situation as citizens where the Lord's ways are being ignored and we have recourse through whether it be constitutional amendment or whether it be through legislative efforts or whether it be through efforts in the courts, we must go for that and make that happen. If we can, peacefully, civilly, you and I could get a beer sometime, whatever, as well. I mean, I want to make friends while I'm here, even though we're locking swords, okay?
Oh, look, I believe that we ought always be able to dialogue and in instances agree to disagree without becoming disagreeable. And so
Yeah, it's so important.
I've always functioned along those lines.
I've seen that. I've admired that.
Okay, Senator from Sumter, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple points and question. So first, very appreciate your testimony. Very well spoken, articulated.
I'm sorry. Excuse me, Senator from Sumter.
Yes.
There's only 23 seconds left on the clock.
Okay.
So
Got you. Can I ask just a quick question?
if it's in,
It's very quick. Okay,
Very quick.
so the way I categorized your perception is that this bill is the will of God, but and though I have some empathy to that, do you think this is the will of the people of South Carolina?
I don't think I would characterize my position as the will of God on this bill. I think this bill has some parts where it can be improved, and I would be very hesitant to call anything written by men to be for sure the will of God. But to answer your question, I do think this would be pleasing to God if this bill passed. And politically right now, to look at the idea of moral versus political, I don't get the sense that the state of South Carolina politically supports necessarily all the elements in this particular bill right now. I don't know what the political polling would show right now, taking protection back to clinically diagnosable pregnancy, protecting every child without exception, providing historically relevant and sound criminal sanctions for everyone involved with appropriate defense for duress and things of that nature. I don't know where the state stands on it, but I do have confidence that it is biblically sound and pleasing to the Lord. And I hope that the rest of the state will come to see that in due time. I want to again thank you all for taking the time to be here today and discuss this really important topic. First, I want to address the idea that we should rest where we are with the current law. That's something I've heard today, and I want to address that because we shouldn't be happy about resting where we are right now. DPH, okay, let me correct myself, Department of Public Health, they give us numbers from 2024, 3,025 of our innocent, defenseless neighbors were murdered inside the womb. And we use this language on purpose because that's what's happening. This is the intentional killing of an innocent, defenseless child. And I only wish there was so much concern here today expressed about that as all the other reasonable concerns that were brought up. Those are concerns that we will address as best as we can along the way, I'm sure, but they do not and should not distract us from the reality of what's happening. If we understood these children to be human beings, we would all admit we have a public health emergency on our hands. And so I just want to say, no, we can't rest where we are. And these numbers don't include what comes from an organization called We Count that tells us there are 3,890 approximately by male babies poisoned at home by their mothers. And so, as we heard earlier, this is where women are killing their children themselves at home. And they know what they're doing. The testimony I submitted has all the evidence in there that these women know what they're doing. You've heard the evidence already. These are uncoerced. They're willingly killing their own children. They know what they're doing.
So, Dr. Clark, let me make sure I clarify that. I mean, time keeps running. But DHEC in 2024 reported a number of 3,025
Correct.
abortions.
Correct.
But what you are saying, and some other information we got earlier today, is it's likely that even more than that have happened in addition.
Yes, absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
most abortions are already done using the abortion pill. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm
More than
saying.
that are already being done by mail order pills.
Correct. And the moms who do this have specific, complete, unconditional immunity in the heartbeat law right now. And so, again, We Count makes estimates based on data that they get from sources based on prescriptions that are being filled and sent to our state. And they do that for every state, and they have that data available. And I'll refer you to the Lozier Institute document that I gave to you as evidence, where they look at the South Carolina numbers and they include the We Count numbers. And so abortion is legalized murder. That's what we need to call it. It's taking an innocent, defenseless life. And so that's still happening in our state, and it's happening in a way that is destroying the dignity of these children as well. And so the heartbeat law is not enough. At Personhood, South Carolina, we're 100% pro-life, but I want you to hear also we're 100% pro-dignity, okay? We want to protect every single life that we know is present, and that's why we use the language clinically diagnosable pregnancy, because the arm of the law obviously cannot nor should not reach into a situation of uncertainty. So if we know that a human child is present, the arm of the law is activated. And that's what the basis of our law was when our Constitution was ratified in 1895. The specific privacy clause that was referenced early, written in 1895, was written by those who had passed law or oversaw law recently where abortion was illegal if a woman was known to be with child in our state. That's the history of our state. And it had criminal penalties potentially for the mother at that time. And so we're not doing something that's unusual. We're doing something that's according to the history of our state. And that's what we want to get back to, is the origins of our nation, where we didn't make ourselves God. We acknowledge that life is an unalienable right. Legislators, governors, judiciary do not have the right to determine which human beings get life. And it was very clear from the beginning that it was considered to be every child. And so we need to get back to that, to honor these children. When we say that we're pro-life 100%, we grieve over the terrible situation that takes place with rape and with incest and with what I'm going to call medically limited children, because I think it's a discriminatory phrase to call these children, to say they have fatal fetal anomalies. That is a pejorative term. I think we need to say they're medically limited. And none of these things would remove the right to life for a child outside the womb. And another false assumption in these situations is that pregnant women are harmed more by keeping the child than they are by having an abortion. And that is just certainly not something that can be proven from the literature. The evidence that I submitted to you earlier is very clear on the deep emotional, spiritual, physical suffering that comes into the lives of women who have abortions. Increased risk of breast cancer, increased risk of preterm birth, increased risk of suicide. So to just assume that telling a woman she can have an abortion is the best and most compassionate place for her is not proven by the data. And obviously, we think it should not be allowed, even if the data did show that, because it's wrong to murder another human being. But the data, we say, if you will look at it closely, it is not an undisputed fact that women suffer less when they kill their children. In fact, we think the data shows the opposite. So that's our answer to the removal of the exceptions. And so we say that we're 100% pro-life. Why should a child be punished? Punish the rapist. It's the rapist who did the crime. Let the child live. And children are a blessing from the Lord, we are told, and there's no exceptions to that. And that child that's in the womb, and this is a hard one, but it's true, that child wasn't placed there by the rapist. That child was placed there by God. We already heard the data, the stats on how unlikely conception is and implantation and pregnancy is. God does that. Who do we think we are to question what God has done? Well, these are hard facts, but it's the reality of the situation. But in addition to being 100% pro-life, we're also 100% pro-dignity, and this may be a new term for some of you. In fact, I'd never heard it before I thought of it a couple of months ago. I don't know if anybody else has ever used it. Why is equal protection so important? It's important because our laws tell a story. The sanctions in our laws tell a story about what we value. And there's nothing more valuable in all of creation than humanity. Creation wasn't very good until God made mankind. So when we have our laws and our penalties for destroying a human being are less than destroying property like we have right now in the heartbeat law, we cannot rest with this law. We cannot rest. We have to have our sanctions voice to the world the value that we place on human life. So I hope that you will think about that it's pro-dignity. But right now, these children are being thrown in the trash, as we've heard, or flushed down the toilet. It's a grievous situation that we are in, that we are not preserving the dignity of our fellow human beings in South Carolina. And we have an opportunity to do that with this bill and go forward in the path of expressing to the world we are made in God's image for the glory of God in the name of Christ, and tell the whole world that through what we do with our law. And so that's why we're 100% pro-dignity. And this is against, all of you know it, it's already out there. I'm going to talk about it. This is contrary to what's being put out by South Carolina Citizens for Life. And it is my prayer that we can have a meaningful conversation about this, and the error of their ways will be seen. And if I am wrong, that I will see my error. We've put out from Personhood a lengthy response to their efforts to say that all women are victims, and to say that this bill somehow subjects women to the death penalty. I hope you will read it. Obviously, you heard from the lawyer earlier, there's no way that you could, with responsible effort, claim that this bill subjects a woman to the death penalty. Not at least without quoting the operative language in the bill itself, which wasn't done. And so I plead, especially with those on the right, to see the eroding influence of South Carolina Citizens for Life if they will not turn back from this path, and the national right to life. This is a deception that has been propagated upon our nation for almost 50 years now, and we need to see the error of it. And countless numbers of women have carried these errors with them into the abortion clinic, not believing the truth about the value of that child. And so, yeah, this is a big one. We've been praying that we'll have a chance to overturn the apple cart and talk about this topic of equal legal protection, because that's voicing to the world how valuable these children are. All participants need to be culpable. Thank you. All participants need to be culpable in order for us to maintain the dignity of the victims. If we allow any participant in the crime of killing a fellow human being to somehow be forever immune from the crime, not only are we decreasing the protection of that child, but we're also marring the dignity of that child. I do want to comment a little bit more on this idea that all women are victims, which is the position of South Carolina Citizens for Life, going so far to say that you're not pro-life if you're in favor of any criminalization. I want you to know how grievous that is to me that they say this. It is not the way that it should be. Women are moral agents. It's paternalistic and dehumanizing to treat all pregnant women as if they don't have a choice in the matter. And the glorious care pregnancy centers that we love so much and we enjoy their work are founded on the concept that these women have a choice to make. So which is it? And we hope that the whole world, especially the pro-life world, will wake up to this reality. Women are moral agents. I hope that you will go to the websites that I gave to you. I hope you will listen carefully to the testimony. These women who walk into these abortion mills, by and large, know exactly what they're doing. I invite all of you, especially, and hey, who knows what progress I might make with my friends here on the left too, but I invite all of you to go and stand outside of an abortion mill one time and just watch with your own eyes. And you tell me if I'm making this up. I think that would be something that you could go and do and just judge for yourself what you're seeing. Why in the world would we want to rule on every single case before it ever happens? There's nowhere else in law that we do that. Let's trust the system that we have to determine if the woman was coerced and mistreated and abused and make sure that she's not found in any way criminally liable. And at the same time, when a woman walks in there and intentionally kills her own child, let's make sure that the law speaks to the world about the value of that child. I do want to just say in closing, I think we've established this bill will not impact IVF or contraception. The language that's in this bill is active only at clinically diagnosable pregnancy, which will not impact contraception or IVF. And in fact, the clamoring that's taking place right now is a bit odd to me because the operative language that they're referencing in this text has been present in our law since approximately 1995, and that's as far as I could get back. So has IVF been negatively impacted during that time? No, it's still being practiced exactly the same way. Now, I will say this. I do believe that a day is coming when we're going to wake up to the reality of the evil that's taking place through the current IVF practice. But this bill has nothing to say about that, okay? So I don't want anyone to confuse my position on that, okay? Maybe there will be a battle about that in the future, who knows? But I do believe that this bill, clearly, carefully written, is not going to touch either that or contraception. And again, pay attention, the operative language has not changed since the heartbeat bill or since the pain capable bill or since the woman's right to know bill in 1995. It's the same operative language. So it's an old argument and it hasn't proven true yet. I don't think it will with this bill either.
Dr. Clark, let me just try to help make sure I understand what you're saying at that point. When you're talking about the operative language, you're talking about in the code already.
Correct.
There's the word conception was defined as fertilization. That's not something new in this bill. That's already in the code. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. And so that's been in our law for decades now. So I think what we really see here is, like, how many IVF specialists have come up front and say, look, this is bad for IVF, but otherwise I love this bill. You don't see that. Why? Because there's an underlying worldview that's behind this, where we disagree on when life begins. We disagree on which lives should be protected. And so it shows itself. All of these important issues that need to be addressed, not one of them was, but I think the rest of the bill is good to protect babies from being murdered inside their mothers. And so I think it's important for us to be 100% pro-life and 100% pro-dignity. And while I've already said I think this bill could be improved, and again, those concerns that have been raised, if the language needs to be improved to protect doctors, to better protect mothers, let's do that. But the focus, let's don't get our eye off the prize. The focus is the cessation of legalized murder of babies inside their mommies in our state.
Thank you, Dr. Clark. Is there any questions over here? Okay, no? Well, his time is up. Oh, I mean, it's,
yield my 2 minutes to him
okay.
to close this out if he wants.
Senator from Salisbury.
All right, well,
They're gonna
thank
let you go.
Thank you, Senator from Williamsburg, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate it. So, sir, I appreciate your heartfelt and passionate testimony on this. I feel that you certainly deeply care about where we're at and where we're going. But and much of what we heard today regarding the IVF, I think was, in my assessment, more projection from folks that are concerned that IVF is going to be eventually impacted, though this bill clearly, in my assessment, does not really address IVF in really any significant way. My question to you, as the president, chair of the Personhood organization, is what is your opinion on that? Do you hope to see one day that a fertilized egg discarded be categorized as murder?
I believe there is a non-criminal way to practice IVF. Okay,
what would that be?
let me say that. I've looked at the process as a physician, and I've studied it very closely. I know the success rates would drop significantly, and I know it would be a whole new world of IVF. But I believe there's a non-criminal way to practice IVF, okay? Now, if we are going to be consistent, and God blesses our state to see the reality of what is happening, a day is coming when that's going to stop, and we're going to implement some sort of non-destructive of human life way to get this done.
So I'm hearing the affirmative, yes.
It is the unjust taking of a human life.
I'll take that as a yes. Thank you very much.